Final thing I'm going to talk about is the nerve tests. So, you have been shot and wounded in the ranged phase, or you have been charged and attacked in the melee phase. You've taken some wounds. If you take a wound during your opponent's turn, there is the possibility that that unit will be affected by that. They might break, they might be destroyed. We do this against the nerve test. So you notice there's two values, 10 and 12. What happens is, with the number of wounds, usually indicated by a dice, say this unit has suffered 2 wounds, you roll 2d6s. You always roll 2d6s, add the total together, add that to the total number of wounds that unit is already suffering. We said 2. And then compare it to those 2 values. If it is on or over the second value, that unit is destroyed. So if I had 2 wounds on them, I rolled 2d6, got a 5 on each, that adds up 2 plus 5 plus 5 is 12. That unit will be destroyed. If, however, I rolled 2 4s, 2 plus 4 plus another 4 is 10, that unit instead would be wavered. Now they would stay where they are, but that would have an effect for the next turn. If you roll a double 6, that unit is always destroyed. If you roll a double 1, that unit is always only wavered, depending on things that grant rerolls and stuff like that, but it doesn't matter how many wounds they've taken. So those were the 4 phases: movement, ranged, melee, and the nerve test. It was very, very simple. There are exceptions. There are things that affect what dice you would need to roll. There are things that gain extra attacks, auras as well, that mean you can bypass your opponent's defense by a point, and so on. However, they are simple things to add. I was just going through these simply, just as a very, very beginning. As you can see, I know it sounds quite complicated, but it is a really simple game to pick up once you've had a few goes. You move all your units, you fire with your eligible units by rolling the number of attack dice and looking at your range score. You then roll all of those hits against your opponent's defense, assign the wounds to them, do a nerve test for everything that's been wounded. You then go on to the melee phase. Anything that is engaged with the enemy, i.e. you've charged them that turn or you've re-engaged them, you roll your attack dice again, but this time looking at your melee value. Anything over your melee value is a hit. You roll those then against your opponent's defense. Anything that's over their defense is a wound. You assign that number of wounds to the unit. You do a second nerve test. You then pass it over to your opponent. Your opponent then moves all their units, does all their shooting, does all their melee, and back and forth. You have 5 turns each, and then you roll a d6, a 50-50 chance of there being a 6th turn. And that is Kings of War.